trade deadline, which is on Friday. The Boston Bruins are pretty much listed in every rumor to some varying degree of interest, some varying degree of wanting to buy, wanting to sell. If you caught the game on Thursday night, you caught Don Sweeney on NESN's pregame where he basically said, we might do a little bit of both. They want to respect the process that they're on in terms of still rebuilding up from what they did a year ago, but also this team has been good, and he likes to give his team a chance. And so that's something to watch now between now and next Friday. They have 3 more games to kind of prove themselves in between now and then. You see it on Thursday night. They win that game. They grind it out. So here we are. They are relatively safely above a playoff line. They're in on a lot of players. And I got a feeling that they want to make a move. And by that, I do feel like a sizable one. We've heard the rumors. We've heard the rumblings of Rasmus Andersson before he was traded from Calgary to Vegas. Let's give a quick rundown here of the players that they've been linked to with a week to go before the deadline. They've been linked to Robert Thomas in St. Louis. Speaking to someone the other day, I was told that they really, really like him. Do they have the goods to pull off that kind of trade? Robert Thomas, point-per-game center in St. Louis, responsible two-way player, first-round pick back in 2017. In the prime of his career, making good money, but that's that sweet spot of a window. Linked to defenseman Mackenzie Weegar out of Calgary. We'll talk more about him in a little bit, but that's another right shot D, much like Rasmus Andersson. They're also linked to Justin Falk from St. Louis as well. People have wondered about Colton Parayko. Rasmus Ristolainen is a guy they've been linked to, a defenseman down in Philadelphia that we're going to see today. There's a lot of noise around the Boston Bruins right now, and how much of it is this time of year? We all want our clips and we want our stories to get read. Everyone wants that. How much of what's been going on is just, hey, it's the Boston market. They're going to read it. They're going to click it. That they can be of interest, and how much is real. I will say this. If we are going back to what Don Sweeney has done historically throughout his career, there's been a lot of moves that do come out of left field that are not the ones that you expect. And do the Bruins have another one of those lined up? Think about 2023. We all thought Gavrikov. That's the guy. What happens? Nope. Dmitry Orlov. No one saw Tyler Bertuzzi coming when that happened. Nobody really saw Hampus Lindholm coming either. That one came out of left field.
I think that with the extension. I think that was the move that went, wow. Okay, wow.
Yeah. Then you have, in 2021, they bring in Mike Riley. I don't think anyone even thought that was going to happen.
Was
right?
that there was a couple of years. There was like Chikrin. Was that?
That was around that time. Yeah. That's what you thought they were going to get, and they get Mike Riley.
Noah Hannafin.
Yeah, and so they are very. I don't know. I think Don Sweeney is more in line with doing what you're not expecting. I think he prefers to do his work in the dark, if that makes sense. I don't think Lou Lamoriello would always say to teams like, "Hey, I don't want this getting out. If this gets out, we're not doing it. I'm not doing it."
In silence like lasagna.
Exactly.
That's the line, right?
And I believe so. I haven't heard it since high school, I think. No, but really, this is sort of been his MO, right? The only move that I think you knew was coming was the Taylor Hall move because he wanted to come here. He basically forced his way here. And so I think that they have an appetite. I said this on Zolak and Bergeron. I think they do have a pretty big appetite to make a big move. It's just, can it materialize? This deadline, one of the reasons why we've been doing a whole show for a few months now about selling, perhaps, even though them being a good team, is because the market doesn't have a ton of sellers, right? And so if you can capitalize on that, you kind of have to do it. And so that's a topic between now and 11 a.m. And next Friday for that matter. But we'll also talk about the Olympics if you want. We can talk about that. Great hockey game. Loved it. I found myself drifting in and out in the first period. A little too early for me. It was a little too. That's what I discovered. I was awake for it, but commercial breaks or stoppages, I was like, ooh, eyes are getting heavy. Especially because I'm a late night person.
Well, did they go up 1-0 in the first period?
Yeah.
Okay, so That's very interesting that, I'm not saying it didn't grab you, but I don't know. I kind of felt this slight weight off my shoulders when they got that first goal. I don't know if that made you feel better, if it made you feel. There are people here who felt worse. That it's like, all right, we're up 1-0, but it's not enough right now. I personally felt better. How did you feel after they went up 1-0?
Besides sleepy, I knew Canada would make a push. I knew Canada would make a push, and that's why I think I said it on a podcast, like entering that game. And I was like, I'd love if they got like a nice 2-goal lead, because you feel a little bit better with the 2-goal lead, because that opens the door for, if you don't love your start, you can, like, if they score one quick one, you can settle the guys down. Or if it's 2-0 and then they tie it 2-2 and boom boom, like, you can call a timeout if you really have to, and just get your guys settled down. But it didn't happen. I mean, I think Connor Hellebuck, really proved me wrong. I came into these Olympics going, is he the guy? I felt like there was an urge from Team USA to not have Hellebuck lose the job, but like, if Swayman takes it and runs with it, that's amazing, right? Or if Ottinger can take it and run with it, that's amazing, right? Never really happened. It was Hellebuck, and he delivered, and it's unfair, right? I think it might be unfair the way that I kind of hold Connor Hellebuck's playoff success or lack thereof against him as like a reason why I didn't trust him in international play. It's like, well, that's different. That's after an 82-game season where he typically plays like 68 games for some reason, and he's burnt out. Olympics are a little bit different, right? Olympics are like in-season Connor Hellebuck, which has historically been pretty damn good. So I thought it was a great game. I thought, Felger on Monday basically said what I had wrote on the website on Sunday, which is like, you can't complain if you lose a 3-on-3 when your three are McCarr, McKinnon, and McDavid. I'm sorry, dude. I understand your point, and I don't totally disagree. It's the right message, the absolute wrong messenger. Like, I don't think I like 3-on-3 in the Olympics when it actually matters. You want to do that in preliminary play and round robin play? Sure, go for it. I don't know if I like it to determine gold. I understand, though, you can't be there all night, right? You can't be there until 5 OTs, right? And so you want to avoid that possibility. But I don't know if I like 3-on-3 for a gold medal game. It just seems a little. That's what we do in November, to not be there all night for Utah Mammoth versus Florida Panthers. Like, we do that for a reason in the NHL, to kind of go, all right, on with it, on with the show. Gold medal, I don't know, but I also understand that you can't be there all night. So it's not a horrible point, but it's the worst guy to especially when it helped you against Czechia like 2 or 3 days before.
I thought it made for some incredibly compelling drama in sports on television, and I got my first like real taste of how nerve-wracking it could be during the women's gold medal game when they went 3-on-3 with Canada, and somebody lost, I can't remember which way it was going, but somebody lost a puck through their legs and it crossed the other line, and it created an odd man rush going the other way. The game didn't end on that, but I was like, oh, this is why this is so interesting, because it's one thing if you're doing 3-on-3 and it's regular season, we're just going to go to a shootout. But when the stakes are that high, your margin for error is so thin. I think that makes just a wonderfully dramatic sports watching and entertainment, because that's what it's supposed to be at the end of the day. I am supposed to be entertained. I woke up at 8 o'clock. I mean, I was working, but say I didn't. I woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning to watch this. I would like to have a fun time watching it. And I think the 3-on-3 for the gold, I don't have a single problem with how they do it. I hope they continue to follow these rules. I would not hate if they did that in the playoffs. I really wouldn't.
So 3-on-3 is so stressful. And nobody
good stress.
Nobody listening wants to hear me, talk about, men's league and tournaments and all that. I did a 3-on-3 overtime once, and it was the most stressful thing I've ever done in my entire life. I made a bad read as a defenseman, and so I got on my horse to get back, and I just tackled the person. I just dove to and I took him out because I was like, this is better than them getting a breakaway right now. It is so stressful. Like I was just like, I don't want you to have a breakaway. It is so stressful 3-on-3. Like, I can't imagine what it's like when it's gold medal on the line. I'm just doing it for fun. Like we were doing it for fun, or like little tournament. You know, like I can't imagine what it's like for an Olympic gold medal. So it's pressure. That's all it is.
It creates such a great stage for your goaltenders too. I mean, Jordan Biddington, the cockroach that we just cannot seem to get rid of, had an excellent game. And Connor Hellebuck might be like the greatest hockey player to have. You know, he's got a gold medal. He's got all the regular season hardware. He's got like a Presidential Medal of Freedom now, and he might never, ever, ever win a Stanley Cup. Like
they're not getting there this year.
I don't know if that like invalidates his career. It's so crazy. Like we're going to be looking at him if he never wins a championship. I mean, I don't know if he'll ever win one in Winnipeg if he ends up leaving at some point and catching one on his way out somewhere else. But he will be a very, very, very compelling case study for, I mean, we did this on Felger Maz a couple weeks ago, the one-hit wonders of, guys who are known for one singular moment. His greatest moment as a hockey player might be, his standout performance in overtime against the Canadian team, Nathan McKinnon and Connor McDavid and company, if he never, ever wins a cup. But again, you need the pressure of a 3-on-3 overtime to really add to that drama and really, raise the stakes even more. I love it. I absolutely would love more of it in the playoffs too.
You want 3-on-3 in the playoffs?
I wonder. See, I'm wondering if the NHL looks at it and goes, this was pretty good. This was a lot of fun. We got a lot of mileage out of that game. I legitimately wonder if they would look at it and go, all right, we're going to bring this to our competition committee or whatever, and think about amending this in the future. I'm not saying I need it this year, but I understand why it's fun. I understand the merits of having 3-on-3 hockey in overtime, and I would not have a problem with it in the playoffs.
I'm out on that. I love these marathon games, and I know that makes me a sadist, but there's nothing quite like the energy of being in a building that has that anxiety for like 90 minutes. It's a different kind of anxiety. It's enjoyable if it's games 1 through 4. If it is game 5, 6, or 7 and it happens, you're like, I want to die. Actually, this is not great. This is not ideal. Don't love it.
I mean, think about how long those Bruins Blackhawk games went in like 2013.
Yeah,
the amount of opportunity to end games there and having just your heart broken. I think, I'm not saying those weren't bad, but at this point in life, I'm like, I just want to go to bed, guys.
I thought the one in 2024, I thought the Bruins Maple Leafs Game 7 was going to go like all night. And then Pastrnak ends it in like a minute and 20 seconds.
Well, didn't we have one when during the pandemic where they were playing on the same sheet of ice we had? I can't remember. I think it was Toronto and Washington went like 4 overtime.
No.
The Bruins ended up having to play at like 10:30 the next morning because of how long the previous game went.
It was Columbus and Tampa, and they went 5 OT. It was 5 OT.
Extenuating circumstances.
It ruined the whole day because they only had the one rink.
So you could never. That's what I'm saying. It won't. At least I hope it never happens like that again. But that's 5 overtimes is absurd. Absolutely absurd.
But you remember that game. You remember that game more than you would
because the Bruins played at 10:30 the next morning. That's why I remember it.
But you still remember it.
It had a negative impact on my life. That's why I remember it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like there are elements there of like I think when you're a part of that, you feel like you're part of history. Like I couldn't look away from that Blue Jays Dodgers game that went like 18 innings or whatever, 17 innings, whatever it was. This past year, same thing with the Red Sox Dodgers game back in 2018 that went marathon. Like you remember Nate Eovaldi because of that, and similarly with hockey. You remember, you remember those guys that played like 58 minutes in that game. You're like, what a warrior. You know what I mean? So like, I love that charm. I kind of don't want to lose that. Anyway, 617-779-0985. We're taking your phone calls. Trade deadline, Olympics, the Boston Bruins. There's plenty to get to there. Meat on the bone there. Up until 11 a.m. This is the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show.
Stay tuned for more of the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey.
Hockey Show, taking you up until 11 a.m. This is basically our unofficial or official trade deadline preview show, depending on how you want to look at it. But there's a lot to get to, and talking about that with us is joining us on the expert line here is Ryan Johnston, live from Philadelphia. Ryan, what's going on?
Not too much. How we doing, Ty?
Good. Trying to cram it all in. Right back to work here. A lot to get to, obviously. I want to start on the ice. The Bruins get back to work on Thursday night, immediately jumping into what was the most important game of the season, in my opinion, given how Columbus had been playing, how close they are to you in the standings, and the Bruins really grind out a game on the back of their goaltenders, Jonas Korpisalo and Mikey DiPietro for a hot minute there. What did you see from that game, and what did you like from that game?
Yeah, it certainly was, especially early on in the game, kind of, I think, in the vein of what we would have expected from teams that had 3 weeks off. I ran into one of the Blue Jackets broadcasters after the first period, and he kind of, gave me a little look, and he said, well, there was a lot of energy in that period. I said, well, yeah, not really sure it was, directed the right way, but it was, wasn't pretty, certainly, and certainly wasn't pretty from the Bruins' perspective. But, if you saw the clip that the Behind the Beat folks put up on social media the other day of Marco Sturm in the locker room, he said, he's proud of his team. Because he said, we weren't at our best, but you find a way, and that's what you have to do over the course of an 82-game season, whether you've had 3 weeks off or whether you're playing a back-to-back. You're not going to be at your best at times, and you've got to find a way. And it just so happened that the way had a lot to do with Jonas Korpisalo the other night.
Yeah, I thought he was phenomenal, and he's been phenomenal for a while now for them. I believe now he's top 10 in save percentage since coming out of the Christmas break as far as the league goes among goalies who've played 8 games. So he's been really good, and it's interesting, right? Like, it's an interesting spot for him where first game out of the break, he's a starter, right? Because of Swayman going down to D.C. and the travel, and they want to get him acclimated. And it's a big spot, and he delivered. And I feel like that's so important, right? Because Marco Sturm comes out of the break and says, like, we're going to need Swayman, and we might have to ride him down the stretch. And it's like, not if Korpisalo's playing this well. It really does give you just another card in your deck that you couldn't play a year ago. You really couldn't play it a year ago, and now you can. And the Boston Bruins, as we know, have always been a better team when they have 2 goaltenders.
Yeah, Corpy's, I think it's 5-0-2 in his last 7 starts. I mean, so, as the team has, gone on this run here, of course, really since kind of the calendar turned to January, they've only had 1 regulation loss, and I think it's now 15 games, and he's been a big part of that. And so, it is. It makes it a lot easier a decision when you don't have to worry about one guy over the other. For the coaching staff, if they know that Korpisalo can come in there and is going to give you a chance to win the same way that Swayman gives you a chance to win, that certainly is going to be helpful here over the last 24 games. And realistically, you don't have a choice. When you've got. So what we had 25 games in 48 days. So we're down to 46 days for 24 games now starting today. There's 5 back-to-backs in there. You don't have a choice, right? Both goalies are going to have to play a decent amount because the schedule is just too overwhelming to be thinking about having Swayman play like 20 out of 24. It's just not going to happen.
Right, and you want to avoid that for obvious reasons. I mean, we've seen the numbers, right? Like, we had them a year ago. His numbers when playing 4 games in 8 days or 4 games in 7 days, like, they weren't up to par. That 4th game was almost always a throwaway game because you weren't going to get the best out of him. Now, he's curbed that a little bit. He's been better in those games, it feels like, this year, but it's still something, like, you don't want to have to go there until you have to, right? Like, I always feel that way. Like, I don't care if you got the best goalie in the world. I don't want him playing every other day until the playoffs. I just don't think it's beneficial to anybody, growing.
Well, ideally, you want him, somewhat rested by the time the playoffs come around, right? You want him feeling good. You don't want him to have to, and we've seen it, from other teams before where, they have to ride their goalie so hard down the stretch that he got nothing left by the time you get into the playoffs. And so, there has to be a balancing act there unless you really just don't have any choice.
Yeah, I go back to that. The Winnipeg always does that with Connor Hellebuck, it felt like. Like he would play he'd finish the year playing 14 of the final 16 games, and he bows out in 5 games. You're like, that you didn't get the best version of Connor Hellebuck in those playoffs, right? UC Saros is a great example, too. Saros got torched, I think it was by Vancouver a couple of years ago. He does so much to get them into the playoffs, but then they get there, and he was sucking wind. You know what I mean? He just had nothing in the tank. And so, yeah, you want to avoid that. Obviously, you might have to lean on him, but it's not great. It's not ideal, right? And so this is why another reason why getting these points now is so important. One player who had a great game on Thursday. You talk about the energy and whatnot and bringing it. Victor Arvidsson. He has a goal. He gets the empty netter. 2-goal night for him. Having a really good year for the Boston Bruins, a surprisingly good year for the Boston Bruins. Marco Sturm was talking about him after the game and said he's finally healthy. This is the Arvidsson that I knew we were going to get. He's finally healthy. He's productive. It does feel like he has become more of a mainstay on this team than perhaps we thought when they first acquired him from Edmonton for a fifth-round pick, basically.
Yeah, and there's no question, how much Marco Sturm values him. He's mentioned it a number of times this year about how, when their past work together in LA and so he knows him, and he was a big part of bringing him here. And he's just, he's a guy who that line of Zacha, Middlestat, and Arvidsson, Sturm has basically put that together and left it. He's tinkered with just about everything else along the way, but it's clear that he really likes those three together. And really, I think, kind of in the second half of the season, we've seen why. Even when Zacha's gone into a little bit of a quiet stretch here, scoring wise. Middlestat's gotten on a little bit of a mini heater here, and now you get Arvidsson, who's got 4 goals in his last 4 games. With the 2 that he scored on Thursday night, and he's really kind of, I like what he brings as far as the speed and kind of I don't know if you call it grit, but he's just like, he feels like he has an impact on the game, whether he scores or not. You have to be aware of him defensively, because he will get up ice in a hurry and try and create a breakaway or try to create a scoring chance, in a one-on-one or an odd man rush. He's one of those guys that just kind of sneaky can impact the game. And, and that line, has certainly earned Marco Sturm's trust, and rightfully so.
Yeah, to your point, Ryan, they've given that line, this according to DauberSports.com, they've given that line 371 minutes this year at 5-on-5 play. That is by far the most among all Boston lines to this point this year. It has about 140 or so minute lead over the Lindholm, Pastrnak, Geekie line as Boston's most common line. And over that stretch, they have a plus 11 goal differential, so they've been effective. They've been absolutely effective for this team. And what's really interesting about that is that when we entered the year, we didn't know how that line was going to look because you have 2 centers, right? So one's got to play wing, and it's been Middlestat, and he's been really effective, I think, as a winger. And so I just find it really interesting that you have the second line here where we kind of came into the year thinking that perhaps if the team did not live up to expectations, that all 3, were possibly going to be, kind of pump and dump players. But now it's become, in a way, a huge line for Marco Sturm's team, and a line that he clearly leans on to generate, as you mentioned, the energy, but also like the offense, right? Like they've been really effective in that regard. And so just another example of everything coming up Marco this year, for the Boston Bruins. At least once you got past that initial losing streak there, there's been a lot to like from that second line, it feels like.
Yeah, and going back to the point you made about there being 2 centers, that was kind of the question in training camp was, okay, you're going to play Zacha and Middlestat on the same line, who's going to be center? And Marco wasn't shy about it really from day one, saying he thought that Zacha was better as a center. And I think that has certainly showed itself here over the course of the season. And, I think he made the right call there.
Yeah, and the season has been so long to this point, and there's been so many games that we kind of forget that Middlestad, who's been good for them, was a healthy scratch, but early in the year, and kind of basically, had to say, I have to get back to making my family name proud, and here he is now, a second line fixture for this team. So really interesting line, dynamic wise, and what they've been able to do. Ryan, I want to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to get to some calls. There's a lot to get to, obviously, with the Olympics and the trade deadline, and everything in between. So we got some loaded phone lines. So I want to take a break and then get right to the calls if you're down with that.
Sounds good.
Awesome. That will be. We'll take a break here. When we come back, right to your phone calls here on the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show.
The Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show will.
See Philadelphia Flyers. RJ, give me the actual puck drop time. When is that?
We don't exactly know yet.
Oh, it's one of these stupid ones where we're in a holding pattern until the 12:30 game's over?
We have an ABC doubleheader today, folks. So it will be dependent on how quickly the Penguins and the Rangers can get through their game. So it is either 3:20 or 3:25, and we won't know that until sometime close to game time. They will give us the thumbs up or the thumbs down as to whether we're going at 3:20 or 3:25 today.
I think you were broadcasting the games when this happened. I think this happened a year ago where like Tampa's game against like Pittsburgh, it was a blowout, but it went late. And we were all just sitting there like, all right, can we start the game now? And like, but you literally couldn't until that game ended. And there was all these post-game shenanigans and whatnot. And I was like, I just want to play the game. This team stinks. I just want to get this over with. I want to go outside. I don't want to be here. Like, that is a weird thing they do, but I get it. Whatever. And nothing we can do about it, Ryan. We just got to keep on going on.
Yeah, I just wish. I mean, I'm interested to see what time they actually drop the puck on that 12:30 game at Madison Square Garden. It's like, because you can easily get that game over by 10 after 3 and have the Bruins and Flyers ready to go at a regular puck drop time. But ABC's got to get all their Messier and Subban and all those guys need to be able to get their camera time. So
yeah, we got to hear Mark Messier talk about 1994 for the 18 millionth time. Because everyone wants to hear that still. Yeah, the Rangers. By the way, just real quick before we get to a phone call here, I saw the stat and I couldn't believe it. Teams with regulation wins at MSG this year: the Islanders 2, the Carolina Hurricanes 2, and the New York Rangers 2. They have 2 regulation wins in their own building this year. That's crazy. They are a truly wretched team, wretched product of the New York Rangers. And you know what? I don't feel bad. I don't care. I don't mind seeing that team struggle. That is one of those teams I like seeing struggle.
6 wins in 26 home games for the Rangers this season. 6-15-5 is their home record, and that includes, I don't know how many shutouts. I know they got shut out, but it's the first 3 home games they played this year in a row.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's been a mess from day one.
Well, at least they don't have to send a letter out to their fans. They already did that. They did that a month ago, so it's not coming now. Anyway, we got Maria in Watertown. Maria, what's going on today? Oh, I think I did something. Maria?
Hey. Are you there?
Yep, I got you. Sorry about that. I pressed the wrong button.
Oh, that's okay. Great to talk to both of you. Ty, were you serious with that repost about Jake DeBrusk? Honestly?
I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think that would happen.
Oh, my word. When I saw that, I'm like, I wanted to bang my head against the wall first and then say, why? Why? But I've read some things today, and it seems like the Bruins are all over the map with what they're looking for here, and it appears that they want to add something, either a defenseman or a proven forward. I'm not quite sure I understand the strategy of that, but my question to both of you is, which do you think is of greater need? Because I find it hard to fathom that they can address both.
Maria, thank you for the call. No, it's a great point. Ryan, if you had to pick one right now, forward or D, where are you leaning?
I would probably tend to lean defensively. But again, it's kind of like, what are you, what is the hope that you're trying to get out of it? Are you trying to get out of it something that's going to help you, this year and beyond? Well, you've got, we know you've got McAvoy and Hampus, Lindholm, and Zadorov locked up long-term defensively. You've got Yoki Haru, who's here for another couple of years. Mason Lorai's got a year left on his contract. Peake's a free agent at the end of the year right now. Jordan Harris would be an RFA. And then you've got Aspero for another couple of years after the contract that he signed earlier. So it's like, are you looking to get kind of that fourth guy locked up long term? Then lean defensively. But you've also got, up front, what's we were talking about, Middlestad and Zaka earlier. Each of them only have a year left on their contract. What's the long-term outlook there? Victor Arvidsson is an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year. So, you have a whole, I think, in your top six that potentially gets filled by younger players, who are coming up through the system. But you also have a question about, is Jonathan Asbro long term? Is that your fourth guy in your top four? Is that what you want him to be going forward? And are you confident that he's going to do? So I think there's some questions both up front and defensively that when you look at the longer term structure of this team, they could use either. But because of who they are and how Marco Sturm wants them to play, I think I would tend to lean a little bit more toward the defensive side.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree because I just don't know if Andrew Peak is a long-term fit. I don't know if Yoki Haru is a long-term fit. Mason Lohrei is playing better since the trade rumors, but obviously he's been up and down. It just feels like they are really leaning in, right, on having a strong defense and their backbone being in their defensive zone, right? And that would kind of jive with how Marco wants to build his teams. Like you think about who he cites as his coaching mentors. He cites Darryl Sutter and Claude Julien. Those are coaches that loved their D-zone play, right? And so if you have that and that's important to him, you probably want to add there. And yeah, to your point, like you mentioned the forwards, like we got to keep in mind that James Higgins is likely turning pro at the end of the year, right? So you're likely going to sign him and burn the first year of that contract, and so there's one forward that you're gonna bring in. And so I think to touch on Maria's other point of her call about sort of the kind of doing a little bit of both, I think they realize that they have these guys coming up. And they got to make some room, right? Like you got to make room. If you want to make a move here, you got to make some room because their roster is really tight. Now, once the deadline expires, the trade deadline expires, there's no roster limitations, but you have to have cap space, right? And that's been a challenge for the Boston Bruins right now in terms of having the cap space to call up guys and send guys down. Marco Sturm has mentioned that many a times where he's kind of said, like, yeah, the roster's the roster. There's not a lot of room for us to maneuver right now. And so I think that's why Maria and Ryan, I think that's why we're seeing rumors where like they might do a little bit of both here because they realize like you got to make some room. Whether you, no matter what you do here, you kind of have a pretty crowded room right now. Not a bad thing, of course, but a bad thing when it comes to maneuverability to make other moves. It feels like.
Right. And, they're kind of in that situation where if you're going to bring in anybody who's got a sizable contract, you're going to have to move money off of the roster to do it. Right. So you're talking about taking something off of the current roster in order to add, which is, you kind of in essence, I guess, buying and selling at the same time. And so, how does that all work out? And, we were wondering the other night when Andrew Peak wasn't in the lineup, whether that might be, something trade related. I know his name has come up, in some rumors about going out because he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year and he might be involved in a deal. Now we asked, the Bruins PR staff about, the reasoning why he was out of the lineup, and we were told he's just out of the lineup. It wasn't, because some teams will tell you it's for, roster management purposes or whatever, trade management purposes or whatever the adjective they want to put on it. But they just told us, no, he's just out of the lineup. And then, Marco addressed that after the game. But, we kind of get into this time of year now where anything that, comes unexpected in the roster on game day, you start to wonder, is there a deal in, potentially coming down the road here? And it just turned out, no, we just wanted to, go with a different six than they did, prior to the break. So I don't know. We shall see. It's going to be a really interesting next 6 days.
I still have no idea what they're going to do, but it does feel like they want to make a move. It just feels that way, right? Like where there's smoke, there's fire, and right now there's a lot of smoke with them. I think especially when it comes to adding a defenseman, and you look at the defensemen they keep being linked to, whether that was Rasmus Anderson, obviously before he was traded, Mackenzie Weegar, Rasmus Ristolainen, they're all right shot D, right? And you have one who's a pending UFA who you sat on Thursday night. And I know they're saying he's just out, but like it just makes you think like they want to make a sizable addition there, and you're not going to move McAvoy, obviously. Aspero is giving you good stuff both on the left and the right side. Mason Lohrei is playing the right side right now. You have Yoki Haru signed. You have Jordan Harris on your roster, and Marco Sturm said after the game that he wants to get him in some games soon. So it's like you kind of look at Jokiharju and Peak, and you're like, all right, are you guys long for here? Like, what's going on? And so it's understandable why people have those questions for sure when it comes to those players right now. Xanadu,
and if you look at
sorry, go ahead.
Just Ty, just real quick, if you look at like the team they're playing today in the Flyers, you were rolling down some of the list of some of the defensemen that that the Bruins have been linked to, and Rasmus Ristolainen is a name that I've seen. There's also some talk down here that the Bruins have some interest in Owen Tippett, who's a winger. And he's signed long term at a little over $6 million. I think he's got like six years left at a contract that pays him $6 million. 27-year-old winger. Is that a guy that we're going to see them linked to as well here over the course of the next week? Now that's going to be that's a guy that would take a little bit of prying to get him out of here. Because of his contract. It's a manageable contract. It's a good player. He's a goal away from his fourth straight 20-goal season. Can be an impactful guy. So that's another thing to kind of watch here is that as you play these teams. Columbus the other night. Now that the Bruins beat them, their playoff hopes take a little bit more of a hit there. You can put Philadelphia, they're closing in on maybe putting them out of their misery here. Philly comes in 8 points behind today. So if the Bruins can beat them in regulation, they're 10 points out of the playoffs at that point, with 23 games left. Does that make them much more of a seller and potentially open the door to a deal? Like this is the kind of chess that starts coming into play here in the last week before the deadline.
Yeah, and to your point about Owen Tippett, we've been talking about him for a few months now. I know that's a player that people in Philadelphia have told me that they think he could use a change of scenery or just cashing in on him while he's still in his prime, because they're falling out of it, as you noted. What I've been told about Philadelphia is that they're a very center needy team. They really do need to reinforce and add some centermen. So, and you look at the Bruins right now, that's kind of a strength of theirs between Minton breaking through and getting what you're getting out of Zaka and Middlestad, and it does make a guy like Matthew Poitras a little interesting. Like where does he land? Is it here? Is it elsewhere? Obviously, you have Hagens coming in, even though Hagens is playing the wing right now. Latorno's a center as well, and so you have a wealth of centers right now that you didn't really have a year and a half ago, or even a year ago, right? And so you got to figure out who's here, who's not, and make moves accordingly. So that is worth watching. All right, let's see, Xanadu. Sorry about that. What's going on?
Am I? So I wanted to chime in on the 5-on-5 related to the NHL and the Olympics, because I hate the idea of 5-on-5 going. But let's face it, I'm in hockey hatto. I resist change. And you talked about memories, and I think like things that don't exist. And I always think of that Game 5 in 2011 against Montreal. I was there with Xana Duchess, my then girlfriend, now wife, and you think about like Camilleri hitting Chara in the leg, or the Tim Thomas 2-on-1. And like part of that is you're in that building saying, I've been here for 4 hours and this is how it ends. But then it doesn't end. It keeps going. And eventually Nathan Horton becomes a hero in our household. And you walk out to the most glorious night ever, and I would hate to see that go. Now, if you really want to satisfy Felger, because we know he has a lot of influence on the NHL, I don't know, do a sliding scale or something like 3-on-3 in round 1, except 5-on-5 in overtime or in elimination games or something. None of this is a good plan because 5-on-5 is the best plan. And I wanted to hear your input on something with the Olympics in particular, too. One is, I'm not complaining too much about the 3-on-3 because I don't think the Team USA was going to bury another goal, and eventually Canada was going to push through. So I'll take the win in this moment because sometimes our allegiances change. And I'd like to hear your opinion on the too many men on the ice, because I think that the refs just said, I'm not calling that. I don't want this game to end on a too many men on the ice penalty and have that be the story, because they did have discretion and that should have been a call. And the only reason I can think they didn't is because the ref said, I'm not having too many men on the ice be the storyline in this one-on-one gold medal game.
Yeah,
Thank you for your time. I'll get off the air.
Absolutely. Thank you, Xanadu, as always. Yeah, I feel like, I mean, it was a problem for them all Olympics, Ryan. They missed when Czechia had 6 guys on the ice for their game tying goal, or their go ahead goal, I believe it was against Canada.
Yeah, Pasta was funny the other day. He was asked about that when he got back from the Olympics, and he said, we didn't know that there were 6 guys on the ice until after the game. Somebody, said it, and then they showed me the picture, and he's like, he did the head count, and he started naming off. I forget who the other forwards were, but he's like, he's a forward, and he's a forward, and he's a forward, and I'm a forward. So, like we definitely had too many. He just kind of laughed it off. But yeah, I mean, calls are going to get missed. We see it in the NHL every single night. So, I don't know really what else there is to say about it. It's just to the point about the overtime, and I agree with a lot of people. 3-on-3 is fine for trying to get a winner in a regular season game. I would like them to, when they do this again, think about, I understand you don't want it to just go, all night. You don't want the closing ceremonies to be happening and there's still a hockey game going on, that's in its 4th overtime or something like that. Fine. Play 20 minutes of 5-on-5. And if you're still tied at that point, then go to like a, 10-minute 3-on-3 in a shootout. Like you're talking about maybe extending the game for like an hour at that point. I don't think that's too much to ask. Going right to the 3-on-3. 3-on-3 is just, it is and always has been kind of a gimmicky thing. It's exciting to watch when it's done right, and it certainly was exciting to watch in that, but that is not the way that you should be determining a championship in anything.
Yeah, it's too. This sounds like we sound like old guys yelling at clouds here, but it's just too. It's too gimmicky. I think for like the highest stakes. It's just there's too much. There's too many variables there, right? Like just one wrong stride, right, and it's game over. And that can be true with 5-on-5, but it's less true. Like it just, you have stronger support, right? Like there's
what's the difference and go 4-on-4? You could do that too.
Yeah,
right. I mean that opens up some ice, but doesn't make it so that it's just constant end-to-end rushes or it's not. 4-on-4 happens during the course of a regular game with some frequency. 3-on-3. When's the last time you saw a 3-on-3 situation in a regular during regulation of a game? It just doesn't happen.
I don't think I've ever seen it. Now that I think about it, I feel like it hits a point where it's matching penalties. Like, all right, we're staying 4-on-4 here. I'm not dealing with this nonsense anymore. Ryan, before I let you go, what are you looking for in today's game, and what do you want to see the Bruins continue to do as they look to extend their point streak to 9 games?
Yeah, hopefully we just see a team that's a little bit more together than and on their game than they were for much of Thursday's win. Like to see them come out and have it, especially in the first period. Philadelphia, as we were just talking about, is kind of maybe on their last legs here, and don't give them a chance early in this game to think they have a chance. You beat them 6-3 back just before the break. Come in here and really try and take this game early and don't screw around with this team. You're a better team than they are, and go out and show that early today. And that's what I'm hoping to see. And and listen, for the Bruins coming off of that game the other night, they get a win. Certainly, you're happy about getting the 2 points there, but not happy about the way they played in that game for the most part. So I would think that they would be a pretty concerted effort to put their best foot forward here today.
Ryan, look forward to hearing you on the call. When does pregame begin today?
We'll be on the air at 2:30, so kind of like the Stadium Series game, we'll be doing close to an hour pregame show for a regular season game. So
I was going to say
we'll have plenty to talk about today.
Write an extra monologue or two, do some extra number crunching if you got it. Well, either way, we'll be listening and look forward to hearing you on today's call and talk to you next week as well.
Sounds good, Ty.
Awesome. That was Ryan Johnston joining us live from Philadelphia ahead of today's Bruins-Flyers game. We're going to take a quick break here. We come back, more of the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show. Bob Beers will be joining us at 10 a.m. Talk to you in a few minutes.
Ty Anderson, Ryan Johnston, and
Live from Philadelphia is Bob Beers. Bob, what's going on this morning?
Good morning, Ty. How are we doing?
Yeah, right back to work. Here we are, and right out of the chute here, right into the chaos. Thursday night, the Bruins get back to work against Columbus. An up and down first period, I think you'd say. Working out the kinks there. A lot, the Bruins weren't happy with it. You kind of saw. I feel like both teams were like, "All right, what are we doing here?" A little bit chaotic, but the Bruins get the win. What did you think about their performance and how they settled in there after that first period?
Yeah, they got through it. I mean, obviously not at their best. I don't think they ever really got to their game. Columbus looked good early. They had some good chances. Korpisalo was excellent, and they find a way to win. It's something that they've been kind of doing here recently. Find a way to get points. Find a way to win. Even when you don't have your best, I think that's a good sign. But at the same time, you still want them to get back to, I think the way that they have to play, we've talked about it before, to be structured defensively and to, not take as many penalties. So they accomplished half of that, I think, in that game against the Blue Jackets. I thought they got a little bit better as the game went on defensively, but certainly the first period, 20 shots against and some really good grade A opportunities is something that they want to cut back on. But, hey, like I said, they found a way. It doesn't always have to be pretty. It doesn't always have to be perfect. It's a matter of getting points, and they've found ways to do that here over the last, obviously take out the Olympic break, but over the last several games.
Yeah, it's really funny. After the game, Corrali kind of he was asked about the PK, and they only took one penalty. They only had to kill off one penalty, and he's like, "Yeah, that's the formula. If we don't take penalties, we win the game." Like that.
Yeah, it was kind of hard to see the adjustments that they were going to make defensively on the PK. I was anxious to kind of see. All right, so what adjustments have they made? That they've talked about it, but they won't be specific about it, which is fine. But we really didn't get a good look at it. I didn't think Columbus's power play was all that sharp, but only one penalty against. That's a good formula. So I think a good formula for them is to keep it under 3. You still want to play with an edge. You still want to play physical. You still want to be hard to play against. But there's certain penalties that you can do without, right? There's some penalties you can't. They're going to happen, but there's penalties that you can do without, and those are the ones that they're trying to eliminate right now. And the PK has really struggled here over the last couple of months. It was good early, but you were taking too many penalties and you were tempting fate. It was going to happen at some point where you're going to spring some leaks, and they did. So staying out of the box, being disciplined, but still playing with an edge and still playing with some bite is really important for them.
Yeah, and to your point about keeping it under 3, they're 11-3 when they take 2 penalties or fewer. So it's so obvious. We all know, but it's just so important to do that. And so you hope they can continue to stay out of the box there because they've been a dominant team. And that's something that Marco has said. You go back to that game in Tampa, where they lose a Stadium Series game, he basically after the game he says we're a great team if we stay out of the box. If we keep the game 5-on-5, we can hang with anybody. It's just doing that has sometimes been a challenge for them, as we know.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
And then people that look at that game, the penalties they got, they deserved. Mm-hmm. Delay a game, that's an easy call. There was a couple of other ones that, they deserve. Corrali putting his hand on the puck and, the D zone, and then, that's a penalty. It's just, those penalties were deserved. I think that the side of it that I kind of leaned on that game was that I couldn't believe that Tampa wasn't in the box a little bit more than they were, because, for Kaslik to get the only penalty in that big scrum that went on after a goal, I'm like, there's no way that he's the only guy that's going to the box. And there were some penalties that should have been called on Tampa that were not. But the Bruins penalties, they were deserved. So, you put yourself down a few times, and a couple of the 5-on-3s, you weren't going to come back from against a team as good as Tampa is on the power play, especially the way they played lately.
Right, exactly. That, and I found myself saying that too after that game, where I was like, yeah, the Bruins are the most penalized team in hockey, and you know what? They on a game like tonight, they are, but Tampa's number 2. So I don't know if they're not doing anything.
I don't know how they had 7 straight power plays.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with that. I'm just.
It hadn't happened in
you
like
that
20
before.
years, for the Bruins.
One game, outdoor game, all the eyeballs on it, and 7 straight power plays for Tampa.
The call comes down from above in the headset there.
Yeah.
A little interesting. One of the things that Marco kind of talked about after the game on Thursday was he was really upset with that second goal that they gave up. When you look at that second goal, what was it that drives a coach bananas with that kind of goal against?
Well, I mean, you're back. You're in the zone on the back check, but you're there, but you're not there, right? I mean, look where that shot was taken from. Mm-hmm. That's a slot chance. You've got a 2-goal lead in the third period, and you're giving up that opportunity right there. I just thought that the coverage, and I think that's where the effort's there in terms of getting back. Like nobody's dogging it in that sense, but you've got to be more aware in terms of protecting the middle of the ice, and they didn't do it in that situation, especially at that point in the game. So I think, I think it's crept into their game a little bit here recently. Look at some of the losses that they've had in overtime, and we talked about, okay, if you're going to get it to overtime, you at least get a point out of games. That's all well and good, but you've had leads in the third period here recently where you've given up those leads. The Ranger game, you had a lead going into the third period. There was another game, was it Nashville, that they had a lead going into the third period and they gave up a goal. They've had 3 overtime or shootout losses, but you've given up some goals in the third period where it's been pretty airtight most of the year, where when you have a lead in the third, you've done a really good job of not just protecting it, but extending the lead. So you extended the lead in that game against Columbus, but then you give up a goal. And I think that's the way that goal was scored, and it's kind of crept into the game a little bit in the third period, giving up some of those chances. I think that's kind of where he's at right now, where they have to be better in that area.
One guy who came ready to play right out of the gate was Jonas Korpisalo. Really impressive the way he's played coming out of the break. We've talked about it before, I know, but even more impressive that he has that Olympic break and comes back and is ready to go. And he's been such a key weapon for this team, it feels like, since that holiday break. How important, they've talked about leaning on Swayman, but how important is it to have that second goaltender, that backup that you can lean on? Because the schedule, we all know, the schedule is going to get absolutely crazy for this team down the stretch.
Well, it's crazy for everybody. I was talking to Donnie Waddell, the general manager of Columbus, the other night, and he was saying that I think they have 17 games in the month of March because they have a makeup game. They had one that was canceled due to weather against Los Angeles. So they've got, 17 games in the month of March is going to be, I think the Bruins what are the Bruins, 15 or 16? But I think the one thing that's an advantage for the Bruins is they don't have any long trip as far as travel goes. You've got some back-to-backs in there. You've got some, games that are, they're going to come quickly. We know that, but it's the same with every team. Washington's already played 61 games. The Bruins have 3 games in hand on the Capitals. We've been saying that, the Bruins have played the most games this season. Now the Capitals have had 3 games in front of them. But there's not a lot of long trips in it. You've got to go to Nashville. That's the only game out of the time zone. We have 1 trip to Florida. That's early April. So, a lot of them are quick hitters. And the area I'm more concerned about is not so much the schedule, but the road games. This is an opportunity, I believe, to get back to 500 on the road today. You've got more road games than home games, and that's something that has to be better for them. So we talked about the PK and talked about other areas where they can try to improve, certainly being sharper on the defensive side of the puck today against Philly. But, the road is an area that has to get a little bit better, and it starts here today.
Yeah, you mentioned that they entered today's game at 11, 12, and 4 on the road this year. So yeah, you can get back at 12 wins and 12
their
losses.
home record's excellent.
Oh, they've been fantastic at home.
They're one of the best teams in the league at home.
Yeah, and I think the game on Thursday, I want to say it was 10 straight wins now at TD Garden. I want to say
10 or 11, yeah.
Yeah, so they've been remarkable at home. It's just getting that road record obviously up and what have you. Any players that you noticed that looked like they had a little bit more pep in their step from this first game back? That maybe were looking like they needed a break during that final game in Florida, those final games in Tampa. Anybody stick out to you in that regard?
I'm going to go a little negative on that one. I think there were more players that were a step behind in that game.
Okay.
I really thought that there were some guys that needed a game, and that's why it was a good one to win, that weren't at their best. And hopefully a full practice yesterday, and now, an opportunity today here against a team that you can, I'm not going to say you're going to completely eliminate them, but you can really, put them well in arrears with a win here today. I'm looking for a lot more from a few guys. I just thought it was a quiet game from some guys, and maybe a step behind in decision making, getting their feet moving, that type of thing. So, it's not to be totally negative. They found a way to win, which is excellent, but they're going to need a little bit more from some important players here today.
One player who we saw a lot of in the Olympics, obviously playing for Team USA, was Charlie McAvoy. It's been really funny. I think since Team USA won, a lot of like the tenor around McAvoy has kind of changed a little bit. Like fans, I think, are noticing him more now than they maybe have. And I'm kind of sitting here going, he's had a really good year. I think, you take the injury out of it, I think he's been really productive for this team. How do you feel about Charlie McAvoy's year as a whole, and how he's really adjusted under the first-year head coach and the first-year system that Marco Sturm has implemented for this team?
Pretty good. And I thought he was good the other night. He's not one of the guys I was kind of looking at. I thought he was pretty good the other night. Look, he can be an impact player. He's going to play 20 to 25 minutes every night. He's going to play in every situation. His point totals now are climbing. He's been better on the power plays number, what is it, 2 or 3 in the league, maybe? I didn't check the stats today, but they're right up there. They're
number
top
3
5 in the league in power play. Number 3 power play. He's the quarterback on that power play. So they've been good. And, can he be a little bit better in certain areas offensively? I do think so, but his point totals have started to climb. He's got a point streak going on right now. He's way down on the list in terms of issues right now for the Bruins, as long as he stays healthy. It's, there are other areas I think that they would really like to improve on, but Charlie's been a constant when he's been in the lineup. And I think, because of the minutes and the important minutes he's played, I think he's really taken a good step forward this year.
We got some phone calls, and I got more to get to with you, Bob. Obviously, we got 3 more games to go here before the trade deadline. Bruins interested in a lot of names out there. I just want to kind of go over what they could or what they should do between now and next Friday, but want to take a quick break and then get right back to it here on the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show.
Stay tuned for more of the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show on the Sports Hub.
Miller time. It only happens if you make it happen. So say hello with some beers. Make the plans. Live a little. Because legendary moments start with a light. It's Miller time.
I talked to Morgan Geekie after the game on Thursday, and I asked about the energy with the team compared to this time last year, and he says way different, polar opposite. He feels like the team is built to either add or stand pat. That was Geekie and the locker room's feeling on it. We got 3 games to go, less than a week before the deadline. What do you think if the Bruins do add, Bob? What do you think they should focus on?
Well, are you going to sign Higgins after the year? That's kind of that's an ad that you expect as a real possibility. He's had an outstanding season. I think he got to the 20-goal mark, if I'm not mistaken, yesterday maybe. But if that's an ad offensively, then look, I think you're looking to add to the. I mean, there's no secret they were in on Rasmus Andersson. That's a right shot defenseman. The rumors are swirling around them adding a right shot defenseman. So behind McAvoy, what do they have on that right side? I'm a fan of Peaks, but I think I'd much rather see him as the third pairing. Yoki Haru is hit or miss. He hasn't wowed. I'm curious to see what the lineup looks like today. Lohrei on the right side, I'm not a huge fan of, but he's been okay. Aspro can play the right side. So there's a couple of things. I think if they're linked to that many right shot defensemen, that's kind of what they're looking for, and that can be a good ad for them. And you add somebody with a little bit of bite on that right side, and somebody that can play 18 minutes a night, 20 minutes a night. That's going to help McAvoy. And I think it's going to put you in a better position there with that kind of depth.
Yeah, to your point, Bob, obviously they were interested in Rasmus Andersson. They've since been linked to Justin Falk. They've been linked to Ristolainen, Mackenzie Weegar. All right shot guys, and so it feels like where there's smoke there's fire, and they continue to be linked to guys on the right side, and I think it goes hand in hand with your point. It's like, yeah, you have McAvoy and you have guys that can play there and have played there, but are they foundational, right? Are they guys that you look at and say, yep, this guy's here long term? And I think that's really what makes things interesting. And also with Higgins, as you noted, 20 goals now, 39 points through 29 games. He's making a really great late season push for a Boston College team that is winning games and looking better. And so I imagine he does turn pro at the end of the year.
That's the guess, right? I mean, we don't know that for sure, but if you're looking to add a forward at the trade deadline, which they still could do. Mm-hmm. But we talked about this a little bit already, Ty. I don't want a rental. Right. I don't want to give up draft picks for a rental. And I think when you just heard Don Sweeney's clip there, that's not what they're looking for. And the whole thing with Rasmus Andersson, and we don't know what happened behind closed doors, but everything we're hearing is the deal broke down when Andersson said he wasn't going to sign an extension. And the Bruins weren't willing to do a deal unless he was willing to sign an extension. So I don't know how true that is. I'm assuming a lot of it is true. And that's a good sign for me. They don't want a rental. They want somebody that's going to help them down the road. And I think that's something that they're looking at hard right now. When he says that they're going to be a little bit more cautious, why are you trading? You're not going to trade first-round picks for a rental right now. And I think that's what that conversation with Sweeney said to me, reading between the lines, that's what it said to me.
Yeah, and I always go back, I brought it up before on this show, but I always go back to what Cam said too on Media Day, where he basically said, like, we don't want to get in the playoffs just to get in. We want to build this the right way. We want to be a Stanley Cup contender. And it feels like that's sort of the balancing act here. That's the challenge. Well, and I think that's why Don is saying we might be more cautious here.
Really, four first-round picks in the next 2 years. And Toronto is just, I know that you listen to the Toronto media. I listen to it. They are just, they are so upset right now that the Leafs are in the position that they're in, and they have to give up their first-round pick, to the Bruins coming up. And if it's not top 5, I'm anxious to see what the draft looks like, because there's a lottery. The Leafs are going to get the 5th pick. So I'm anxious to see what that lottery looks like. Right now, it's in a great spot. It's going to be top 12. Mm-hmm. I think the Leafs. The Western Conference is so bad in terms of some of the lower teams. So, Toronto's the 10th, 11th, 12th worst team in the league right now.
I think their lottery odds right now, they're like their best odds are 10th overall in terms of like the most likely pick they're going to get. I think they have the best odds for 10th overall.
That's a great pick, and you've got 2 first rounders, and if you give up one in a trade, it would depend on what the trade is, but again, you're not giving it up for a rental.
Mm-hmm.
If you're giving it up for somebody, it's somebody that's got some term or that's going to sign an extension.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's I think the balancing act here is that you don't want to undo the pain that you went through, right? For quick fixes, like you have to think pragmatically and you have to think long term. That's
what Sweeney said. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, reading between the lines, they're going to be a little bit more cautious. Well, they're not giving away first rounders for a rental. That's exactly what that says to me.
It does feel like the appetite to add another core member, whether that's on the back end or front, like it's totally there. It's just deadline prices are always tricky, right? Like it's just everything's inflated. Everyone's asking for the moon, and then you have that weird middle zone between like the draft, like between the deadline and the draft. And it feels like the draft is where like those bigger trades can happen for more reasonable prices. It's just, do you have the patience? Do you have that?
You have some motivated sellers right now.
Right.
Don't you? I mean, there's a lot of teams that are just completely out of it and have no chance to make the playoffs. I think more now than maybe we've seen in the past. There's teams that are completely out of it, and you've got some teams that are willing to make some of those moves, and I think you just have to wait a little bit. I have a hard time believing that between now and next Friday, is not going to be a busy time. I think that there's going to be a lot of people on the move, a lot of players on the move, and because you've got motivated, you get some buyers, obviously, but I think you got a lot of motivated sellers.
It's really interesting too. Like you mentioned Toronto, and they're struggling so hard that it does feel like they're going to put that for sale sign on their front lawn. And if you're in this boat here, and that pick is top 5 protected, don't you want to do everything you can to get in the top 5, and try to get there and have that pick actually be yours, like that. I wonder what they do there.
Well, they gave up 2 first rounders at last year's deadline, right? They gave up one to get Lawton, and they gave up one to get Carlo. So, I mean, they don't have the first rounders. Now, if you ask Tampa Bay, they don't care about first rounders. They're about winning now. Well, they're in a different position than Toronto is. So, yeah, Toronto's looking to recap something in the first round. So, they've got some guys that they're looking to move. But they're not the only team, right? There's a ton of teams. I mean, Vancouver, the Rangers, Nashville. I mean, there's a lot of teams that are in that selling mode right now to try to get something for some of their players, and that's why I believe it's going to be an active deadline.
It's just that Toronto pitcher, man. It's just so weird because like you look at their list of contracts, like it's a bit different than what Boston did a year ago with Carlo and Marchand and Coyle, because the core pieces are locked up just beyond just this year and next. Like they got guys that are under contract for a long time, and I don't know how you navigate that. You don't. I don't know if you want to take a blowtorch to it, but like. I don't know what they're going to do. It's a really unique deadline, and as you mentioned, so many teams still in it, right? Think they can be in it.
I had I was disappointed that certain guys moved last year at the deadline. Good people, right? Coyle, Carlo, Marchand, even Frederick. It was disappointing to see some of those guys go, but hey, the vision has worked out for them. They're a likable team this year. They work hard. They're not going to have it every night. There's been a couple blowout losses, but mostly, they've been in it to, play the right way. It's not always perfect. It's not always pretty, but they play hard. And I give them credit for that, and give them credit for identifying, pro scouts for identifying some of the guys that they brought in this year who have done a really good job. We can talk about, whether it's Husendinov or whether it's, Steves, who was a healthy scratch the other day, but, and other players who have come in and really done a nice job. So credit to the pro scouts. Now the amateur scouts have to do, their job. And if they have those draft picks coming up, this is an important couple of years for the Bruins and what direction they're going to continue to go in.
You kind of alluded to it earlier when we were talking about the first game back, second game back today. What are we looking for when it comes to handling Philadelphia and continuing to take care of business against those teams that are chasing you in the standings right now?
Yeah, I just think it needs to be a more complete game in terms of being on the same page. I mentioned earlier, I think there were a number of guys that were a little bit of a step behind in that game, but they get a great goaltending performance, and you needed it. You give up over 40 shots on home ice, 20 in the first period. You needed a good goaltending performance. Actually, two good goaltending performances. We had DiPietro into there, who made a couple of good saves. But, that's not a formula for success. Giving up 20 shots in the first period, and I thought a lot of them were grade A chances. So that area has to be cleaned up, has to be sharper this afternoon. And I think with a good practice with everybody involved yesterday, that they got an opportunity to do that here today. Just have a more complete game. You want wins, you want results. You're not always going to be at your best. Okay, I'm not going to say they got away with one the other day, but they weren't at their best. So now it's an opportunity to say, okay, all right, we're ready for this thing now. Everybody's back. And that's true for a lot of teams. Guys coming back from the Olympics and everything, you knew it wasn't going to be sharp for a lot of teams. And just ask Toronto. They're 0-2 coming out of the gate. Ask LA. They're 0-2 coming out of the gate. You wanted to make sure that you're at least ready to go in this stretch run and how important some of these points are.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. I mean, this is a great stretch for them. I think, it's a beneficial stretch in terms of you get Columbus, and I know they're white hot, but you handle that, so you're not worried about that. Philadelphia's had their struggles. No Crosby for the Penguins, and then Nashville. So they're this is a really good window here to kind of create more separation as we talked about, and really kind of plant your skates in the ice and say we're a playoff team, and it's a great opportunity. Unless
you approach it as we think we're a little bit better than we are.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like any team can beat any team on any given night. We've known that. We've watched that all season. There are very few teams that are elite. Most of the teams are pretty tight in terms of, separation as far as how good they are compared to the other one. And I think that this Philly team is something like that. It's just, they're not an elite team. They're not just a horrible team. They're a team that's kind of tinkering on the middle, even though they're out of a playoff spot right now. So you take them lightly. You come in and you don't play the right way. You don't do the things that you need to in order to win games. You don't pay attention to the details. You find yourself without at least a point here today. So I think they got away with one the other day to some respect against Columbus. Now you got a game under your belt. You got a practice under your belt. Everybody's back from the Olympics. That's done. Let's focus on what we need to here.
Yeah, and it should be an interesting game, too. With remember that last game against Philadelphia. Philadelphia's heavyweights, they tried getting things going a little bit here, and the Bruins calmed them down, or calmed the situation down. So you can expect a really physical Philadelphia team as well, trying to stay alive.
Possibly.
Yeah, we'll see. You never know with these matchups. Bob, thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to hearing the call of today's game.
All right, Ty. Thanks. Talk to you later.
Sounds good. That was Bob Beers joining us live from Philadelphia. We're going to take another quick break here, and we come back right to your phone calls, straight till 11 a.m. here on the Shaws and Star Market Hockey Show.
The Shaws and Star Market Hockey Show will continue with Ty Anderson.
all-new Civic Hybrid or our full line of hybrid and electric vehicles today. Victor Arvidsson has become a guy that I thought would get pump and dumped to a guy that I would be shocked if he's traded between now and Friday. They clearly like what he brings. They clearly value what he brings. They call him the Weasel, affectionately. The way he plays is very Weasley in terms of getting real low to the ground. You know, how he can contort himself in front of the net, how he skates. I think they really like him, and he's been healthy. He's been good for them. They've gotten more out of him than I envisioned, and as Marco Sturm said after the game on Thursday, it's because he's healthy. He's healthier. He's actually feels good. Coming to the rink every day, skating. His skating game is where it was prior to the injury. Been a good piece for them. And so I don't think they move him, but how do you augment the roster? You want to make additions, you're going to have to make subtractions. Who is on the outs between now and Friday? Again, as I noted when talking with Ryan earlier, during post-deadline, you can have as many guys on the roster as you want. You have to be cap compliant. I don't know if they can be cap compliant without moving some guys out. And this is the challenge for them. Go back to that 2018 team, the 2017-18 team that really surprised a lot of people. They add Nick Holden. They add Rick Nash. They sign Ryan Donato. They sign Brian Giunta. Like they have like a really crowded. They add Tommy Wingles. Like they have a really big deadline. But what they have to do to get there, they had to move Matt Bolesky. They had to move Frank Vetrano for a third-round pick. Like you had to create cap space to have that kind of deadline where you can run a 5-skater healthy scratch press box. But like. You can't do that right now, right?
Moved, I think Ryan Lindgren went for Rick Nash also, and he's still in the league. And I only note that because of something you mentioned with Zolak and Bertrand about the draft picks burning a hole in Don Sweeney's pocket. And I went back and looked and said, when is the last time that this team has had a draft where you go, okay, that was a good class? And it might be that Pasternak, Lindgren, and I'm blanking on the other Ryan Donato. I think Ryan Donato was the second round pick there, where you go, okay, you've got some guys that are still in the league right now, maybe even the year after. Charlie McAvoy and Trent Frederick, I think, went in that class after. But after that, it's slim pickings as far as guys who have been able to hold on, not even just with the Bruins, but in the league in general. So I'm wondering, if there is still that willingness to move guys, because as you said, you have to be cap compliant. Well, a great way to be cap compliant is to still have all these guys on your roster. And if the younger guys on your roster aren't going to be filling up your cap, then you can go out and add guys for bigger money without losing that compliance.
I don't want to get ahead of myself here when I say this. The 2025 draft class right now, the Bruins have the Hagens one. It's looking pretty good so far.
Obviously, current history. I mean,
right. No, it's way too early to know.
You're right. It's early to tell, but it looks like the last 2 years they have some players to be excited about. There was sort of that buzz with Matt Patra, and I don't know what his future will be, but also being pragmatic enough. Yeah, probably. But understanding why the Bruins don't have any first round draft picks over the last couple of years, because they traded them in order to bolster their team at the deadline. So when you say that Don Sweeney's he's got 4 first round picks over the next 2 years that are burning a hole in his pocket, but then he also tells Jaffe and Sofia Jurcevic that they're going to cautiously approach this deadline, and I'm wondering how exactly do you middle that? Like, how can you have a cautious deadline, or how can you have a cautious deadline while also having these draft picks that you're so desperate to move on from?
Yeah, I think it's probably you move them for a core piece, right? Like, what I can tell you is that they like Weegar. They don't love the contract. They like Justin Falk. They don't love the value that St. Louis is setting on him. Right? And so
Brock Boeser might be a little too rich for their blood.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just
he's like 7.25, and he's locked up for the next 6 years. But Vancouver, you could get some guys from Vancouver if you wanted them.
I think they like Rasmus Ristolainen out of Philadelphia, who we're going to see today. But Philly has put a price on him that is similar to the price that Toronto paid for Brandon Carlo. They would like a first-round pick. They'd like one of your top 3 prospects, and they would like another pick after that. I don't know if you're gonna do that if you're the Bruins, because again, you like the player, you have the need, but you don't like. When I say they're burning a hole in their pocket, they're burning a hole in their pocket for the right move, and by that I mean adding to the core. Robert Thomas. If there's a younger defenseman out there that like is not on the board right now, but is on the board internally for them that we haven't heard about, maybe that. I just feel like that's when I say burning a hole in their pocket, they really want to make another high impact move. Like, one of the big reasons why I covered the Stadium Series game was because I knew that there'd be a lot of people in the league at this event. And you talk to them, right? You get to have dinner with them. You talk to them and, hey, what are you hearing about this? What are you hearing about that? My biggest takeaway from that whole thing was there's an appetite for the Bruins to make another big move like the Hampus Lindholm trade, where it's like they like what they have, but they think they're another core piece away from elevating their status a little bit, right? The deadline, as we talked about with Bob Beers, is a hard time to do it because of the inflated prices, right? Like, guys go for a lot this time of year, and it's not always worth it. And so this is where, Brian Burke would always say that this is where guys get stupid and lose their jobs, because they're like, oh, we're in it. We got to be in it. It's like, well, you're not there yet, so don't go crazy. We got a lot of people on the phone lines here, and we got to get to them. We're going to go in order of weight. Dan, I keep pressing the wrong button. I think my thing is broken. Can you pull this up? Thank you so much, Ryan. Dan, what's going on today?
Hey, Ty. Thanks for putting me on, and big fan of the show.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hey, I wanted to make a comment on an earlier point about 3-on-3 overtime and the possibility of doing that for NHL playoffs. I personally feel like it's a little gimmicky way of settling a match, and I would hate to see that happen. But I really think it's going to come down to money. And in today's media world that's shifting over to connected television and streaming, the most valuable ad slots are sports, live sports, and having many overtimes allows for lots of extra ad slots. And if you have dynamic pricing, that means much larger income coming into the NHL and the networks. So anyway, I just want to make that fast point.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, thank you for the call. No, it's true. Like, think about the NHL is happy to be on ESPN's app and not on TV because ESPN paid a lot of money.
Right.
Like, it all comes back down to that. And there's a reason why the NHL is trying to get Turner and ESPN back to the negotiating table earlier in the deal, because they're like, hey, you gave us the best payday and we want more of that, right? And so it is true. I do feel like that's something. It's the same reason, Dan, that they won't get rid of the Winter Classic and the Stadium Series. It makes money. As long as you can put, hey, it's the Bridgestone Winter Classic, and Bridgestone wants to pay all that money to have their logo on the ice and part of the packaging, they're going to continue to have outdoor games. They'll go to Wrigley Field 19 billion times if it still makes them a payday at the end of the year. And that's kind of what the league is coming down to. And listen, as someone who has seen the cap go up, crazy amounts the last 5 years, I'm happy with that. I'm so happy we're getting actual cap increases versus the cap is going up $11. Like, well, that's not going to help anybody. I don't know why we're even bothering with that.
Like, you get new laces for my skates.
Right. Like, it's good for the league in terms of the revenue. And it's the same reason why they're going to expand. They're going to put a team in Atlanta and Houston. They're going to do it. It's going to happen. They will be doing that in the next, I would say, 5 to 6 years. You will see more expansion in the NHL because it makes money. People want to play. If they're going to give you $1 billion to be at the table, you're going to say, we'll take your billions of dollars. Thank you. Like, that's what's going to happen. And so it's not going to stop. We're going to have ads on jerseys. We're going to have 2 ads on jerseys soon. And then you're going to have another ad on the helmet. You're going to have ads on the pants. Skates brought to you by, Jimmy John's. Like, it's going to happen.
Look at baseball and basketball right
now.
That is your future. The balance that you need to worry about is not oversaturating your product to the point where it does turn into the NBA. And it's just, we have, 2/3 of the league is making the playoffs because we need to address, the amount of tanking issues because of, teams falling out of it early. And I worry that if you keep throwing more expansion teams at the NHL, that there's going to be more of that going around. Ultimately, these leagues are, I think, going to side with their providers and their advertisers over what would be the best for the sport? What would be the best viewing experience? Because I'm sorry, guys, 5-on-5 for 7 hours is not the best viewing experience. It's objectively not. Whereas a 3-on-3, you could get this over with and you still have the same excitement and the outcome of a playoff game. However, the dynamic pricing is a real point. It's an absolutely real point that they can, sell and you're going to get more eyes. You're going to see, look, here are the peaks. Here's the jump in viewers that we get when we go into these overtime games. You'll have more eyes on it too. I don't think there's a great solution to it, but I don't have any faith that they're going to go, no, we got to think about our consumers first. No, I think in order to grow the game, sometimes you got to take those hits, because I agree with you. I want the cap to increase more and more and more. The NFL cap can increase overall, but they could throw 100 crappy games a season at fans and they're not going to care, because football. Hockey, I think the fans.
The NFL stinks. No one wants to talk about it. The NFL stinks.
I completely agree with you. That's a subject for another show. I think hockey fans will put up with a lot, but they're not going to. I don't think they want to get gouged as far as their viewership experience goes. Although I could be totally wrong, because every single person thinks I'm crazy about my stance on 5-on-5 hockey and the overtime in the Olympics.
Yeah, I just think
you guys are too resistant to change.
No, that's not true. Listen, you can put Rapid 7 on every jersey, and I'm going to be happy. It's just the sanctity of the game is what I'm more about, right? Like traditionalists. There are a lot of hockey traditionalists in terms of like they don't want ads on helmets or jerseys or anything. Like they think it's sacred. I'm more sacred when it comes to wins and losses and how they're determined, right? Like I like the shootout as a last resort. But it's kind of similar to baseball, right? Like baseball, they do the ghost runner or in extra innings, except for the playoffs, right? Like it's kind of like no, you got to earn your runs in the playoffs, and that's kind of how I feel about like the overtime in hockey. It's like no, I want 5-on-5. I want the stress of an overtime power play. I want that. But I want it to be earned. I don't want it to be forced upon me and thrust, and like I have to look at it like that.
No, but you also just named two sports where offense you have to work for it. It's right. Already getting runs in baseball and getting goals in hockey. Come at a premium. They're not always easy to achieve. So I think you open yourself up for a quicker solution and a quicker result by I think RJ said it in our last hour. 4-on-4 would be the happy medium. I think I would kind of get what I want. You purists would get what you want, and I think going for at the very least, I think it should be on the table. I ultimately, yes, I respectfully 3-on-3 would be a drastic change to the playoffs. I wonder again how much the NHL looked at the Olympics was like, I wonder if we have something here. I think 4-on-4 would still hold the purity of overtime hockey that you want, but also help with the entertainment factor that I am looking for.
Yeah, I this is the one thing like I will be a hardo about this.
I'm willing to meet you halfway.
No,
do it.
Hardo. Tom in Boston, could you pull him up, Ryan? Because my thing is like I can't click the button I need to press. Tom, what's going on?
Good morning, guys. Real quick, it'll be whatever the gambling companies want. That's who will settle
this is
overtime.
True. This is true.
My real question is. You guys were talking earlier about, salary in, salary out. How do you build a team for the future? Staying good now. And a name I haven't heard mentioned on the trade discussions is Jonas Korpisalo. He's played well since the Christmas break. We know that doesn't last forever with him. Is there any whispers about him going? I know we don't want another Bussy situation with DiPietro, who's playing well in Providence. What's the deal with Korpisalo? I know they're going to say we've got, a game every other night till the season's over, so they're not going to want to trade him because Swayman needs the rest, but I think you can get a lot for him, or if not, you can at least get rid of $3 million on the cap for the next 2 or 3 years or whatever it is. Thanks, guys.
No, Tom, thank you for the call. I think the Korpisalo move is an off-season move. DiPietro has a 2-year contract. I just think the Korpisalo move is let's get through the playoffs. Let's see how Swayman looks in the playoffs, and then we make the call from there. I do feel like Korpisalo is playing his way into a different city. I just don't think it happens now. The thing about DiPietro, he's been good in the AHL. He makes 2 good saves during his 6 minutes on Thursday night. DiPietro is tiny. He's like not that much taller than me, and I am not a tall man. And I saw him in the locker room, and I was like, oh my God, he's small. Like I was like, damn, that is not a big dude. And you look at the NHL, There are only 2 goaltenders in the NHL that are under 6 feet tall, one of which is UC Saros. However, there are almost 40 goalies in the NHL that are 6'4" or taller. It's a tall man position. It's become a tall man position. Michael DiPietro is not tall.
Do you know what he's listed at?
It's a lie. Whatever it is, it's a lie. What's he listed at?
Michael DiPietro is on NHL.com. He is listed at 6'1".
Nope. Lie. That's like how Marchand was 5'9". I'm like, buddy, you're not 5'9". Nope, that is not a 5'9" man. No, Michael DiPietro is not a big dude, and I think that's why you've had the reluctance from the Boston Bruins to trust him and to give him that job, because a lot of net to shoot at with a guy like Michael DiPietro, unfortunately.
Elite Prospects has him at 6'1" also.
He is not.
Did he shrink? Can you shrink at that age?
He's got that Benjamin Button thing going on. No, I don't know.
If the Bruins come out of the deadline and they didn't make a move, they have their first round picks for this year and for next year. Don Sweeney comes out and says, "Listen, we'll get a lot of the Red Sox isms of like, we were in, but the prices were too expensive." Will you be disappointed?
Yes.
Will the fan? Do you think the fans will be disappointed?
Yes. So here's the problem. If you come out and say the prices were too high to buy, my question would be, then why didn't you sell? If the prices are so high to buy, that means the prices are high for you beneficially to sell. So why didn't you sell?
That's another question. I didn't ask that question because I think the answer goes without saying, but I'll ask it anyways. If they turn around and they flip Victor Arvidsson, they flip a couple guys that they're like, you're not going to be here long term, would you be disappointed?
No, and I say that because if the idea is that if you you'll hear this a lot with teams that don't sell. They're like, well, we don't want to hurt our locker room. If your locker room is hurt by you trading a role player who's in a contract year, then your locker room has greater problems, and you weren't really a cup winner or cup contender when you really boil it down. And so I go to Andrew Peak here and I say, hey, are you here beyond this year? Like, this is what we're willing to pay you. Do you accept that? If the answer is no, it's like, all right, enjoy Edmonton, enjoy Tampa, enjoy because we got to make the right move for our team. And unfortunately, you are a right shot defenseman. You're one of the only right shot D available that doesn't have term left on the contract. We're gonna move you, man. Sorry, it's how it is.
I am very, because we've had since this show began this season, and it seemed apparent that the Bruins were closer to the team they've been now than that bad team that they showed they were in October. I think there's been more of an appetite from the fans to go out and improve this roster. I will be very curious in the next couple of weeks what this team ends up doing, how deep they want to try and get with this group. I agree with Don Sweeney. I think that this group has performed well. I think they do deserve some help. I think they've absolutely earned that. I think Marco Sturm specifically has earned that for this group. I don't love the idea of moving these first-round draft picks. I think part of the reason you ended up where you were is because you didn't have a young group of guys to kind of hurry the process with Patrice Bergeron or Brad Marchand or David Krejci. I love those guys, and I'll always love them. But Jesus Christ, David Krejci was here way too long. Patrice Bergeron was probably here way too long. Maybe even make that point with Chara. I don't know. Point is, you didn't have a young group of guys to kind of, make them start feeling it a little bit. Like, we got this next wave of Bruins coming in, and that's what I really hope that, Hagens and Zellers and Letourneau and Don's Loshalik or the kid in the Olympics, that these guys start to pan out a little bit, and you can turn these first-round draft picks into guys who are going to be here for a decade and not just retreads of, the guys that they have been bringing in.
I just think that they want to make a move, but they got to understand that they are not one move away from winning a cup. They're just not. And that this year has been kind of found money. Fans are happy. You have Fraser Minton, who looks like a legit, potentially top 6, middle 6 at the very least, NHL center. You have Husadinov. You have Aspero. You have the pieces here that have fans going, okay, we see a direction. This isn't last year. This isn't last year when you had Vinny Lettieri, a career minor leaguer, in your top 6 to finish out the year. Like, people see the vision. They see what you're doing. Oliver Wahlstrom's not here anymore. Like, you are building something, and so you got to keep building. You got to build it the right way. Unfortunately, the NHL, and that means drafting and developing. So This has been the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show. We will see you next week, post-deadline. We'll see what they do. And until then, enjoy the week.
Boston's home for sports. 98.5 The Sports Hub.